What's up, dudes? And it's here, and my name's Scyushi, and we're back to more Trove. And today, Luxion is finally back on PC, anyways. Now, here's the thing, guys. I realized that I don't actually have like a proper tutorial of the Luxion Trials, so that's what we're going to be doing today. On top of the fact that I'm letting you guys know that Luxion is back. So, going into Luxion's little pit here. You'll notice that Luxion's been replaced by this little idiot, the Soul Reckoner Suri. So he sells these two items, which unfortunately cash up or qubits. And as most players, you probably don't have any qubits anymore. Then there's going to end up being the Venturine Forge. So we're kind of skipping a little bit ahead here. I'll go through the various mechanics of how you actually complete the Luxion Trials. But essentially, as you do the Luxion Trials, you'll get Venturine. And similar to Delves, you can kind of just keep going and repeatedly grinding it over and over. And the longer that you end up surviving before claiming your rewards from Luxion, the more Venturine you'll ultimately end up getting. It's kind of like a, I don't know, kind of like a small encapsulated little open world dungeon of sorts, where the enemies get stronger and stronger and stronger, but your rewards get higher and higher and higher. So anyways, with this Venturine, which is a resource that's going to expire when Luxion leaves in a week, because Luxion is now a 1 week a month visit, you would then forge that into these Venturine donuts, which then can be used to craft the various Luxion items. And as you can see, these are not only on a daily reset timer, but they're also way more expensive than they were when they initially were in Luxion's inventory. Now, I don't know whether or not these are tradable or not. I assume they still are, because it doesn't say this item cannot be traded or anything. But this costume, I guarantee, was not 225 dragon coins. So this is pretty bad as an update overall, just because it ended up making all of the resources out of Luxion like a lot more expensive by like maybe 15 or 25% in some cases. But the problem is that we haven't had dragon coins become any easier to farm. So shame on you devs, you need to fix it, because dragon coins are already atrocious. Then there's going to end up being this right here. And this is going to be kind of the main brunt of the content. Now, you can end up crafting an Unfortunate Soul for 450k, yikes, or crafting another one for these fragments of Unfortunate Soul, which you'll get as you end up completing Luxion Trials and stuff. And then 5k qubits, or flux, I mean, whatever. Okay, cool. You can also craft these out of the Unfortunate Soul into a singular fragment, which doesn't make any sense to me unless this is giving you a full 100. Yeah, it is. Okay. I don't know why you would craft down, but maybe, I don't know. Okay, anyway, so there's going to end up being these various portals, and you can see the power rank, the difficulty, so on and so forth. So we can actually skip right up to D15. And in this case, you're going to have to pretty much just use a strong class. You got to be very careful not to use a class that's too weak. So I've actually swapped all my stuff over to the Boomeranger, because that's he's kind of the best for this kind of thing. And then we'll end up going into this portal. Ah, yes, here we go. So this is the Trials of Luxion, and it's going to end up generating with 3 random biomes, which are going to end up being referred to as rings. So there's the inner ring, the middle ring, and the outer ring, which would encapsulate those 3 biomes. If we end up leaving or disconnecting or whatever, we can always just come back into the trial. I don't know if that necessarily ends up resetting Luxion's quest, but we'll get into that in a moment, because there's a couple other side quest givers that we can grab here. So this guy wants us to defeat mercenaries, which is invaders as they end up popping into the world. This guy wants us to donate to this thing. And essentially, this is going to end up being us donating items that will ultimately end up giving us a chance of getting various rewards back from it. And the gem dust is going to end up being your best option, just because it is going to steadily increase in cost, as you can see. Now it goes up to 3, then 5, and it does slowly add up and become like much, much more problematic. But if you've got the various resources to do it, then you should definitely do it. You just got to do 15 of them for that guy's quest anyways. But as you can see, it's slowly going up and up and up. And there is a limited amount of these that you can end up doing per day, but whatever. So over here, we've got, the same guy, this stupid crafting table, but it now has a couple different items. There's the Luxion Favor. So this is kind of the main mechanic of this area. is that you'll notice you don't have your movement speed and you don't have your jump. No, I still got my jump. There's certain stats that are mitigated while you're in this area. And so the Luxion favor can be exchanged to boost your various stats, including like the death insurance, which I think is the most mandatory one. Because when you die in here, even if you respawn to get back into the spawn here, you don't want to do that. Because when you die, you kind of fail the objective and then you end up losing a bunch of the items that you ended up just accumulating. So it can be really, really bad, like very bad. So this is going to end up reducing the resources that you end up losing out of it. And then there's going to be Luxion himself. So when we end up doing his first quest, he's going to say defeat inner ring enemies. And if I bring this quest up right here, you'll see that he wants us to defeat enemies within the inner ring. So that would be the Sundered Uplands biome right here. Now, another thing I should mention is if you do want to end up getting into the center, you should craft the Adventurine potions, which are potions that you can throw down, or origin portals. Sorry, not Adventurine potions. Origin portals that'll end up warping you back to the spawn. Because, yeah, thankfully the high jump of Cosmic Dragon still works, so I can get up here. But you'll see, because we're in D15, these enemies are already ridiculously powerful. But there's a little bit of a cheat that hopefully doesn't end up getting attention because of this video. Allies, or rather your minions, don't scale properly, so they're dealing full damage numbers. Because the way that Trove works in general for the end game stuff, if you guys don't already know, is there's a darkness stat on enemies, which is kind of an invisible armor value. And then there's the light stat on players. And the light stat is basically armor penetration. That's how they get away with making the end game enemies super strong and super tanky. The original reason that they did it is because when Trove was in 32-bit, it basically meant that the number value, the numeric value for our damage could only go up to like, I think it was like 1 billion or something ridiculous. So when we ended up getting to that point, it meant that enemies could only go up to 1 billion HP. But now that is no longer the problem and we can deal like heaps and heaps of damage, but the light and dark stat is still here. So anyways, I'm gonna end up killing 50 enemies really quick. Even though Death Defying is insanely helpful, you do wanna be very, very cautious when you're in here because again, death is extremely punishing. And as we get to the higher tiers of enemies, it's going to become so much more expensive and expensive for our wallet because of the stuff that we'll end up losing, but also the enemies will literally like just drain our flasks. You can get up to a difficulty where they'll take like 3 flasks per hit. It's insane how the enemies don't have like any proper scaling. Also, you see the dungeons in the background? Don't bother with them. I don't think that the dungeons should even generate in this world because I think that it's just going to confuse most players. Those dungeons are okay because they're easy to leave, but there's no boss inside any of the dungeons in this world, which means that the bigger 3-star dungeons can generate, you can go all the way through them, and then there's no portal to get out. So you kind of just gotta leave from whence you came. Which is why I would not recommend going into the dungeon. Because minions don't have any limitation on their damage, it means that classes like Draco and especially Tomb Raiser are also really, really good in here. Tomb Raiser especially because it's got some really high survivability. But I'm just using the Boomer because, well, I have all my physical gems all set up and we're ready to go. Anyways, there we go. So we completed the first trial. So now we would end up going back to the center and we would end up talking to Luxion, which then gives us the next trial, which is defeating more enemies in the middle ring. So now we have to kill 75 enemies instead, but now we're gonna do it in the middle ring, which is the Highlands biome. So I'm just gonna go and do that really quick too. I hate the fact that we don't have our movement speed while we're in here. And done. So now I gotta go all the way back to the center again, and unfortunately I didn't bring origin portals. So then can you guess what the next step is going to be? That's right, defeating even more enemies in the outer ring. Personally, I think that this would be a lot less like annoying and jarring to players if it would just have the same kill 50 enemies per each biome. I don't know why the number increases. It makes it like kind of dumb. But let's be real, there are a lot of things that we are all complaining about with the Luxion trials. Depending on the biome type, it can be pretty quick because certain biomes seem to generate a lot more enemies. Unfortunately, it seems like the ice biome isn't generating that much. Maybe because a lot of enemies are spawning in the under caves. All right, so now that next part of the quest is done, so I gotta go back to the center. A quick reminder, do not respawn. These are like the worst biomes, dude. Okay, so anyways, now we actually have one of two options. We could either call it quits right now, return to the hub, get the various rewards, which I'm going to do for the sake of today's video, or we could actually continue going, not getting any rewards, and make the enemies stronger. The thing is, the initial run that I just did took around like maybe say 20 minutes. And it would just end up taking longer and longer the further you get. Unfortunately, the Luxion trials are just innately boring just because of how they're structured. But in any case, let's complete the trial just so that I can show you guys the next step to what you would end up doing if you wanted to either do a trial again, or more importantly, so that you can end up getting your hands on the new Luxion dragon, which is the big thing that a lot of mastery farmers are going for because we already have all of Luxion's items. So going back down to Luxion's little area right here, we now have the Venturine resource and can craft it into the donuts. But unfortunately, you're gonna see that the amount will also go up. No? Yes, it does. Okay, it steadily goes up. It just takes a little while, which is why we can't just bulk craft all of them at once, which is kind of annoying. But anyway, let me just craft a whole bunch of these right here. Just spam click like an idiot. And then we go down here and you can see that there's a new ally that we could craft. But more importantly, there is the new fragments that we can craft. Now, the crazy thing is you can only craft, I think, 15 of these per day, which takes roughly, let's say, an hour to 2 hours of Luxion trials every day if you want to end up getting that full 15. Now, the cool thing is if you go crazy and get anything and everything that you can throughout this entire week, you can get this dragon in a week. It is going to cost you like 500 dragon coins in total as well. Actually, no, it's cost a lot more than that. But anyway, let me grab some fragments here just to show you guys how ridiculous this is. Because once you end up getting 100 fragments total, you can then end up crafting the Luxion egg right here, which you can then hatch into this Luxion dragon with a crap ton more Venturine. The crazy thing is that's a lot of Venturine. And the Venturine resource will expire if you don't end up like using it. So you want to use all of it that you can before the week's end. And you want to also try to use it every single day because at daily reset, the amount that you craft up, like, you know, as you end up spending more and more of the resource, it makes things more and more expensive. And then on daily reset, it goes back down to the base resource value. Suffice to say, this dragon is not like, it is time gated for the fragments, but then otherwise you're just gonna have to put in a lot of grind time in order to get it. I wasn't able to get it last time. I don't think it was possible to get the Luxion dragon during the last visit because the Luxion trial started on a Tuesday and you need to have each and every single day in order to get all of these fragments. So a lot of people will be able to get this dragon this week. I don't know if I will, because this is very time consuming for this new dad. In any case, that's gonna do it for today's tutorial and video, letting you guys know that Luxion is here. Go get grinding. I'm gonna do my best to hopefully be able to stream this today and hopefully over the following week, but I'm busy. I got things, you know, new dad life. In any case, I would appreciate if you like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, all that stuff. I know that today's videos are going to be kind of packed because we had those 2 live streams, but now we're also posting this, and then I've got another video planned today as well. But either way, I hope that this was helpful to you.